There was a time I prayed to die, not because I didn't want to live, but because I no longer knew how to live without pain. Have you ever felt like your body has betrayed you? When every morning feels like a cruel reminder that you're still trapped in a body that won't cooperate, with a mind that no longer dreams and a heart that's forgotten how to love? I'm an ICU nurse. I've held the hands of patients in their final moments. I've been the last voice they heard when their families couldn't make it in time. I've witnessed hundreds of deaths, but I never imagined I'd be facing my own, alone, in the small bathroom of my own home, on a morning that seemed just like any other. I live with multiple autoimmune conditions: lupus, colitis, joint pain, the kinds of illnesses that don't kill you all at once, but wear you down bit by bit. My life depended on strong pain medications and IV treatments through a PICC line straight into my veins. I was no longer myself. I had become a breathing medical schedule, a walking shell, a body with no soul inside. Everything within me had melted into stillness and despair. I didn't pray anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't hope. My mother died when I was 32. 10 years later, I still hadn't forgiven myself for the last thing I said to her. It was harsh, sharp, something I never got to take back. I never had the chance to say I was sorry. And from that moment on, I believed I didn't deserve to be loved, not by anyone, not even by myself. That morning, I didn't have any strange feelings, just fatigue, the same exhaustion I felt every day. I walked into the bathroom, closed the door, and then nothing. No light, no voice calling me, no sensation of falling, no life review, nothing. I died, so quietly that even I didn't notice. But the strange part wasn't how I died. The strange part was what happened after. Because I didn't just die, I dissolved. I was no longer Elena Carter, no longer a nurse, no longer a patient, no longer the woman who once resented God. I wasn't anyone anymore. And then I started remembering, not my memories, but all memories. I don't know what to call it, but there was something, a place, a presence, a reality that drew me in, not with force, but with truth. Have you ever wondered, if death isn't the end, then what is it? And if you were given a glimpse of the entire universe in the blink of an eye, would you still be the same person afterward? I didn't see my body lying on the floor. I wasn't floating near the ceiling. No doctors were rushing in to perform CPR like in the movies. I didn't see anything. But I knew I no longer had a body, not because I saw it, but because the sense of inside and outside was gone. I was no longer the old self observing the world. I had become the space between observations. I was the stillness between two breaths. I wasn't inside a body anymore. I was something that existed between all bodies. I can't say I saw the light, because that would be an insult to what I was within. It wasn't light, at least not the kind that makes you squint or turn away. It was a kind of light that remembered. A light that knew who you were, every thought you ever had, every word you ever spoke, even the things you tried to hide from yourself. And yet, you didn't feel judged. You felt remembered. I began to see, not with eyes, but through a full-bodied awareness. Billions of orbs of light, each one a reality, a planet, a civilization, a dimension, a living essence of something. I wasn't looking at them, I was becoming them. I became a liquid-like creature floating between massive columns of sound. I became a child who couldn't speak but understood every thought. I became a form of life that existed only to love, without words, without touch, without names. And then I became all of it. I can't use the word travel because I didn't go anywhere. I simply shifted thought. And with every thought, a new reality unfolded. There were no limits, no time, no gravity, no form, no me, no Elena. But here's what's strange though. Though I no longer existed as myself, I still had a sense of presence. I wasn't lost. I was expanded. As if I had never truly been contained within a body, only temporarily housed in it to experience what we call being human. That's when I understood no one is ever truly separate. We are all rays of the same light, shining through different prisms, temporarily calling one another names like mother, child, enemy, lover. But at our core, we are still the same beam of light. I know what I'm saying might sound like a dream, but I have never felt more awake. Every emotion I had ever experienced in this life, love, anger, heartbreak, loss, felt like leaves. And what I was inside now was the tree, the stream, the wind, the force that holds it all together. I used to think that death meant disappearing, but death, it turns out, is a return, a release. No more pretending to be strong, no more wrestling with a body that resisted me, no more striving to be someone while forgetting who I truly am. And yet, amid all that vastness, there was one thing that kept me from completely dissolving. Something pulled me back. A whisper, soft but relentless. My mother's voice. I didn't see her, but I felt her. Gentle, warm, forgiving. And the moment that sound echoed through my soul, everything began to shift. I was no longer part of the infinite. I was being drawn toward the place where truth is held. There was no screen, no film reel, no narrator, just me and everything I had ever been. I didn't watch my life flash before me. I returned to it, as if every second I had ever lived was etched into the fabric of the universe, like a fold in time, and now I was being drawn along those folds. But the terrifying part wasn't seeing it again. It was feeling it. I felt everything that others had felt in the moments I had shared with them. I was still me, but I was also them. When I spoke harshly to an ex, I felt the sharp ache in his chest that he never showed. When I ignored my mother's last phone call, I felt the heavy silence that filled her heart. When I held a patient's hand for 40 minutes before he passed, I felt the kind of gratitude that words will never be able to express. Every action, every word, every thought was a wave. And waves don't disappear, they ripple. In that moment, I was the still lake, receiving every single wave I had ever sent out. I had always seen myself as a victim of life, but now I saw I had also caused pain, not out of malice, but out of exhaustion, out of being unaware, out of believing no one was watching. But the universe noticed, and so did the hearts of others. And I felt something else, a buried resentment I had carried for years, toward my mother, toward myself, toward God. I had spent so long asking why she left so early, why I got sick, why I tried so hard and still suffered. But now I saw it. That bitterness had become a stone I clutched in my heart. I held it so tightly, there was no room left for any other light to enter. And then I was shown a memory, so small, so faint, yet more vivid than anything I had ever remembered. I was 6 years old. My mother was cleaning a scrape on my knee. She said, "You don't have to be good. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you." I had never remembered that moment, but this place did, and now it was giving it back to me. And yet, amid all that vastness, there was one thing that kept me from completely dissolving. Something pulled me back. A whisper, soft but relentless. My mother's voice. I didn't see her, but I felt her. Gentle, warm, forgiving. And the moment that sound echoed through my soul, everything began to shift. I was no longer part of the infinite. I was being drawn toward the place where truth is held. There was no screen, no film reel, no narrator, just me and everything I had ever been. I didn't watch my life flash before me. I returned to it, as if every second I had ever lived was etched into the fabric of the universe like a fold in time, and now I was being drawn along those folds. But the terrifying part wasn't seeing it again. It was feeling it. I felt everything that others had felt in the moments I had shared with them. I was still me, but I was also them. When I spoke harshly to an ex, I felt the sharp ache in his chest that he never showed. When I ignored my mother's last phone call, I felt the heavy silence that filled her heart. When I held a patient's hand for 40 minutes before he passed, I felt the kind of gratitude that words will never be able to express. Every action, every word, every thought was a wave. And waves don't disappear, they ripple. In that moment, I was the still lake receiving every single wave I had ever sent out. I had always seen myself as a victim of life, but now I saw I had also caused pain, not out of malice, but out of exhaustion, out of being unaware, out of believing no one was watching. But the universe noticed, and so did the hearts of others. And I felt something else, a buried resentment I had carried for years, toward my mother, toward myself, toward God. I had spent so long asking why she left so early, why I got sick, why I tried so hard and still suffered. But now I saw it. That bitterness had become a stone I clutched in my heart. I held it so tightly there was no room left for any other light to enter. And then I was shown a memory, so small, so faint, yet more vivid than anything I had ever remembered. I was 6 years old. My mother was cleaning a scrape on my knee. She said, "You don't have to be good. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you." I had never remembered that moment, but this place did, and now it was giving it back to me. That's when I realized the one thing I had never truly done was forgive. Not others, myself. I had always believed I needed to be loved to feel worthy, but now I understood I had to feel worthy to truly love. And the moment I realized that, the light surrounding me changed. It came alive. It breathed. It trembled, as if it had been waiting for me to understand that truth before opening the next door. Have you ever wondered if you could live your life all over again, what would you change? But what if you can't go back, only see clearly? Then what part of you would break open? There was no image before me, no gentle eyes, no glowing throne, no God as described in books. Only a presence, a feeling, a complete awareness that wrapped around everything I was. I couldn't call it someone because it wasn't outside of me, but I couldn't say it was me either. It was the source, the ancient memory that lives within every living being but has long been forgotten. It was the original echo my soul had heard through lifetimes, yet never been still enough to recognize. I didn't ask, "Who are you?" I simply wondered, "What am I?" And there was no voice in reply, but the entire space around me filled with the answer. A band of light moved not in any direction, but with intention. It didn't shine harshly. It felt like silk, like the breath of truth itself. And it spoke without sound. You are an experience of me. Like light passing through a prism, you are a color. Not wrong, not lost, not incomplete, simply a part. I don't know if I was crying or dissolving, but I had never felt so deeply understood. Everything I had ever hidden, every shame, every fear of being found out, was bathed in light. Not to judge, but to love. I thought of all the years I had spent striving, working myself to the bone, caring for others while my own body was falling apart, trying to be worthy of a love I didn't believe I could have. And the light whispered, not to my ears, but to my soul, "You have not yet learned to love yourself." I used to think that loving myself was a luxury, a selfish act, something reserved for people who had nothing else to worry about. But now I understand that if I don't love myself, how could I possibly offer anything real to anyone else? If I'm an empty stream, I can only touch others with my dryness. If I'm a soul soaked in resentment, I'll only leave behind the echo of bitterness in those I meet. That light didn't teach me anything. It let me remember. That love isn't a skill, it's an instinct. And that instinct had been buried under fear, pain, regret, and the kind of silence that lasts too long. I asked silently, "Can I stay?" I wanted to dissolve into that place forever. No illness, no obligations, no weight of the body, just harmony, just the deepest peace I had ever known. But then, an image passed through my mind, faint, blurry, but enough to make me pause. My mother. And a voice, broken and buried in a forgotten part of memory, whispered, "Don't carry that with you into the next world." I had never said I was sorry, never truly forgiven, never let myself soft enough to love. And the light, without words, asked me a question through quiet waiting. "Are you complete?" I wanted to say yes, but I couldn't, because a part of me still held something unfinished, and I knew I had to go back. Not to do something grand, but simply to complete a sentence I never spoke. Have you ever stood in the middle of everything you thought you ever wanted and still felt like something was missing? Maybe that one missing piece is the very thing you've been running from all along. I don't know how I came back. No one pushed me down. The light didn't pull away. There was no voice calling me home. I just began to contract, to shrink. From a presence that had stretched across dimensions, I condensed into a single point of light. And then I felt weight, gravity, air, the sound of the ventilator, a heartbeat, but not mine. The rhythm of a machine is monitoring me. I opened my eyes. The ICU lights were cold and white, but I wasn't afraid. I didn't feel lost. I just felt grateful. Not grateful to be alive, but grateful that I had died. I had come to know what death truly is, and because of that, I understood what it means to live. The nurse was crying. The doctor looked confused. Someone said my heart had stopped for nearly 5 minutes. They didn't understand how I came back. I smiled. I didn't understand either, but I knew I had to. The days that followed weren't easy. My body was still sick. I still needed IV medication. I had to relearn how to walk. But something was gone now. Resentment. I was no longer fighting myself. I no longer blamed my body for being fragile. I no longer saw life as a battle to endure. I saw it as a river, and I began to learn how to float. One afternoon, I found an old box. Inside were things my mother had left behind. Some photos, a notebook, and a letter. Handwritten, yellowed with time. "My dearest Elena, if one day I'm no longer here, remember you don't have to do anything to be loved, because you already are love. You've always been the light in my eyes, and there's nothing you've ever done, ever said, or ever stayed silent about that could make me stop loving you." I folded the letter, and I wept. But this time, the tears were peaceful. My mother had never stopped loving me. I had just never allowed myself to believe I was forgivable. In that moment, the loop closed. I had returned, not just to my body, but to myself. These days, I live simply. I tend to my plants. I listen to music. I write down my story, not to become famous, not to convince anyone to believe, but to remind others that if you're carrying words unspoken, forgiveness unoffered, wounds still unhealed, please don't wait until death. Speak, let go, live. I'm no longer an ICU nurse, no longer a patient, no longer the woman who always felt like she wasn't enough. I'm a small light, and that is enough. I used to think coming back meant continuing the life I left behind, but I've learned that coming back sometimes means beginning a completely new one. No one quite understands why I've changed. I don't talk much about what happened. Not everyone is ready to hear a story about light, about dimensions, about meeting the source. But I live as though all of it were real, because to me, it's more real than anything else I've ever known. I eat more slowly now. I look people in the eyes longer. I hold their hands when they speak. I've learned how to listen to the things no one says out loud. Someone once asked me, "Why do you smile to yourself so often?" I said, "Because I remember now. I remember what I was before I became someone. I remember that each of us carries a sacred story behind our eyes. I remember that no one is meaningless, no one is random, no one is in the wrong place. We're all here for a reason, even if it's only to hold someone's hand in their final moments or to look at a flower and smile. Everything belongs, every action echoes, every soul matters. Since that day I died, I no longer fear death. But I do fear something else. I fear living without truly being alive. I fear passing through someone's life without leaving gentleness behind. I fear saying things that don't matter and holding back the words that do. I fear becoming the version of myself who walked into that bathroom that morning and never came back. And there's one more thing. I've learned to be grateful even for what once brought me pain. Physical pain taught me how fragile presence is. Loneliness helped me treasure every honest glance. Death taught me how to live with more kindness in each passing moment. I don't have a grand mission. I didn't become famous after what happened. I didn't write a book or go on speaking tours. I just live. But I live as if every moment is a prayer. And somehow, that has made my life feel whole. If you're listening to me now, I don't need you to believe. I just hope you feel something. Something small, stirring quietly in your chest. A gentle reminder that you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be accepted. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to return to yourself, because you've never really left. And if you've been waiting for a sign to begin again, this is it. You may not have walked through death the way I did, but I believe, somewhere inside you, there's a voice, soft but steady, saying, "It's time. Time to stop living from fear and start living from love." If there's something left unsaid, say it. If you've been angry at yourself, forgive. If you've forgotten who you are, come home, because you were never truly gone. I used to think death was the escape, but it wasn't until I died that I realized living is the bravest thing we'll ever do. I once kept something from my mother, but now I hold nothing back, and I know she always hears me.